Good morning. I am Dr. Lori Desatel. I am an assistant professor in the College of Education at Butler University, where I am teaching undergraduate pre-service students and also our graduate students in our certification in applied educational neuroscience program. And in this segment, we are going to be looking at brain-aligned strategies that will be a part of the third segment, which I will focus on a new lens of discipline. And I want to go back just for a minute and talk about the significance of how our brains are social organs. We talked in the first segment about how adversity and trauma affect brain development, and they affect the regions that we need to learn, those executive functions that live in that prefrontal cortex. But what we also understand is that attachment is the carrier of all brain development. Secure attachment, if we don't have that in our developing years, then our brains are neurobiologically unable to process cognition. That's why we see such cognitive lags. We also see damage into certain areas of the hippocampus, which is the seat of short-term memory, spatial and visual memory, emotional memory. It works very hard with this fight-flight response, which is the amygdala, and they sit next to each other in that lower region in that limbic system of the brain. But when those are activated, our social capacity is very diminished. So we see children and adolescents who look inappropriate, who look disrespectful, who look oppositional and defiant, possibly aggressive and volatile. But oftentimes, when you think about the adversities, you don't have to know what those adversities are, but we all as educators have a fairly good idea of the number of adverse childhood experiences that our children are walking in with. So in looking at that, I know that a comment in the hallway, something that happened on the bus, something that happened this morning at breakfast, or maybe there was no breakfast, or maybe there was lack of sleep, I am really aware of how my children, whether they are pre-K or seniors, how they are walking in, and if that brain is primed for learning. So in this part, I want to talk to you a little bit about these strategies. And when we talk about the 4 legs of applied educational neuroscience, 2 of those legs, we have built in strategies that, again, are nothing extra for our educators. It's not a program like zones of regulation, for instance, or responsive classroom. This is a framework. So you build these strategies into your procedures, into your routines, into your rituals, and you teach these strategies on the front end, just as you would teach traditional procedures. So when we think about meeting our children and adolescents in a brain state, we know that anxiety has become our nation's new learning disability. And we also see in a general education classroom, about 27 to 33% of our students are walking in what I call rough. They are walking in dysregulated. And I want to remind us all 2 things. A dysregulated adult cannot regulate a child. And when we try to discipline, when we are rough, when our brain state is activated in that survival brain response, then the punishment that we are trying to implement backfires. And traditional discipline works the best with the kids who need it the least. So in thinking about this new lens and looking at these strategies, I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the brain-aligned strategies for touch points. And I'm going to use my notes because I want to make sure that I hit all of them. So one of the things that we understand is that touch points are deepening connections with students. So if a child or an adolescent is sharing something with you, validating is one of the most efficient and the most just effective brain-aligned strategies we can use. It is listening not to respond, but to learn and to parrot back that feeling. When a child is walking in and they're yelling, "This is unfair, this isn't right," then we need to just listen and say, "Wow, you seem frustrated. That must feel awful to you." Validation breeds more of the story from the student and gives us an understanding. We're not negating consequences, we are just meeting them to listen and to learn. Another touch point we use is noticing. When they come in, it's not praising, it's noticing a haircut, noticing a tattoo, noticing a pair of green tennis shoes that you didn't see before, noticing a smile. Because when we notice, it says to the child or to the adolescent, "I see you, I feel you, and you're right here with me." Some of the sensory strategies that we work into brain-aligned bell work and we work into our morning meetings are having hand lotion available, scented and unscented, on a sensory table when they come in. It sounds simple, but trauma and adversity are held in our bodies. They are physiological, not psychological. So when we give ourselves a hand massage, when we can smell something that feels soothing to us as we walk in, that regulates the nervous system, and that's very calming. So some of the sensory strategies that we're using, we have an amygdala reset area, or amygdala first aid station with an elliptical, maybe a stationary bike, maybe a rocking chair. We begin the day with some rhythms. So it's mimic me. So I might begin using a rhythm like, and then the kids respond, and then the kids lead it, because we know that rhythm is critical for living life and well-being. We sleep in rhythms, we eat in rhythms, we move in rhythms, we talk in rhythms. So rhythm is critical for learning. So we give the students an opportunity when they come in during morning meeting to use that. We also are implementing focused attention practices. This is a way to take a stimulus, whether it's a taste, whether it's a sound, whether it's a visualization, but we continuously use deep intentional breathing with our students, and this becomes a procedure. So we would never begin the day in our morning meeting or as we begin class without a focused attention practice. And we start small, maybe 3 or 4 seconds. We learn how to take deep breaths. We might breathe in our favorite color and breathe out a worry. We might trace our hand and inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. I have written several articles for Edutopia, and so there are 4 articles that include focused attention practices, and there are also some included in the Indiana Department of Education website with our new social and emotional learning competencies. So we are using breath, we are using movement, brain intervals, wake up the brainstem. They alert us, they bring novelty, and they create a brain state of anticipation. That's another strategy that we're implementing as a procedure. So we begin the day maybe with a frozen grape and notice the sensation in our mouths. We might have a child or an adolescent who comes in really angry and really hot, so we will teach them a routine of maybe 2 or 3 of these strategies using rhythm, movement, or breath, or some type of sensory stimulation that is taught as their own personal routine. So you will have access to these resources, and it's hard to share all of them in 10 minutes, but you are also welcome to reach out to me and to reach out to the DOE to look at all of these resources that we have available. But remembering that sensory strategies, connection strategies, which we are calling touch points, are preventative, they are on the front end, and they are a part of our relational discipline in the classroom. Because the first part of discipline through a brain-aligned relational lens is regulating the child first. It's not negating consequences. It is calming that nervous system so that child or adolescent has access to those executive functions where we can think through our actions and the experiences that just occurred.